Hello, my name's Jane Mills and I'm the Director of the Centre for Nursing Midwifery Research at James Cook University in Far North Queensland. Today I've put together a couple of short YouTube presentations on proposing your research. And this presentation is based on a chapter from one of our latest books, Mills and Burke's Qualitative Methodologies, A Practical Guide. If you're looking to buy a copy of that, you can get that at amazon.com or Sage itself online. So in our presentations today, we've got four main learning objectives, which all circulate around developing and writing a really strong research proposal. We're going to think about the three main types of research proposals, and we're going to consider what you need to think about when it comes to putting your proposal together and also defending your research proposal should you be provided that opportunity. So why do we write research proposals? Well, research proposals are a really useful way, or it's a useful format, for beginning researchers in particular to clarify and solidify their aspirational thinking into a realistic plan of action. So a research proposal really does lay out your plan of action to implement a research study. So when you're writing a research proposal, you need to take a pretty pragmatic approach to how you put your proposal together. Normally there are three types of research proposals. Often, always, those people who are applying for graduate research, that's a Masters by Research or a PhD program, have to write a research proposal as part of their admission process. We also write research proposals, which are sometimes known as research protocols, for human research ethics committees. And we also write research proposals in order to secure competitive grants. Now, each research proposal typically contains a number of different sections. There's the front material, the background to the study, which is all about the justification for why you would need to do this study, the research plan, what it is that you would do if you were funded or you were admitted to a degree program, what outcomes you're expecting to get from your research study and whether or not they are, well, of course you think they're significant, but you need to really argue the case for their significance with those who are reading your proposal, the budget for your study, and also the timeline. Now, when you're writing a research proposal, the very first thing that you need to do sounds very obvious, but you need to print off the application guidelines, and throughout the entire time of writing your proposal, you really do need to refer to them often. There's no point in getting off track in relation to what it is that the people who are going to read your proposal are expecting to see. You need to follow the required format. Remember that your research proposal will be one of many that a panel might be considering or a group of markers may well be grading. So they'll be comparing your proposal to others and they'll be looking to see how you compete in relation to the different sections of your proposal. So you really need to make sure that they're easily comparable to other competitors, basically, so your peers who are also submitting proposals at the same time. Another hint and tip that's very important is to avoid impenetrable terminology. You might well want to demonstrate your expertise in the field. You may well know all of the language that there is to know about a particular area. You may well think that everybody should know what an acronym might mean, but in fact many of the people who read your research proposal will be highly skilled researchers, but they won't necessarily be experts in your field. So make sure that you don't use impenetrable terminology. Be very careful about that. Focus on using plain English. So what do I mean by front material? Okay, the front material is literally that. The front material is that which is at the front of the research proposal. And the front material includes the title, keywords, the research question, the aim of the study, and your abstract. Now, in order to grab people's attention to make your proposal stand out from the others that are there on that person's pile, you really need to create a snappy title, but that snappy title does need to be understandable. Remember what we said about plain English. It also needs to be useful, clear, and memorable. Okay, so we want to make sure that you come up with something that actually people can remember easily. And sometimes an acronym is useful for that. I know we do have death by acronym often in different industries, but there is a reason for that. Acronyms are actually pretty handy a way for people to remember a particular piece of work. You really need to tie your abstract and your title by including the keywords in each of those pieces of your front material. So on to keywords. What do we mean by keywords? Well, this lecture is aimed at healthcare students, so those in dentistry and medicine mainly, and nursing, of course. And so I recommend that for you, you need to go to what is known as the MESH library. So you can see there on the screen, we're talking about the US National Library of Medicine's list of medical subject headings, referred to as MESH terms. If you Google MESH, that will take you to a rather easy to use database where you can search for potential keywords. And those keywords are easily identifiable by Google and Google search engines and all the other search engines that also tie into that. So it's important that you use MESH terms in order to make your keywords really relevant. As well as the MESH terms, there's also the National Health and Medical Research Council list of key terms, and I would advise that you refer to that as well when you're choosing the keywords for your study. So again, we return to that previous point. Tie the immediate aim of your proposal to your research question, tie your abstract to your title, tie all of those things to your keywords. So we want to make sure that the keywords that you've chosen are easily picked up and they also are relevant to whatever it is that you're working, the area that you're working in. Another really important point when you're thinking about the front material and also the body of the proposal to come is that you need to thread the aim of the study and the significance of the study throughout your proposal. There's a reference there to a really good journal article by Marguerite Sandaleski and Juliette Barroso that discusses just this matter. And on this slide, apologies for the small text, you'll see some a diagrammatic representation of some of the things that they talk about in that journal article. And again, this is all about relating the justification for the study the whole way through the research proposal. So all of these things need to link together. The research question and the immediate aim needs to also tie to the significance of the aim. That also needs to tie to the problem. It also needs to tie to the significance of the problem. You need to make sure that you're pulling together the aim with the objectives or research questions and sub-questions, all of which will lead to outcomes, good outcomes, that address the research problem and also meet the long-term aim of the study. So every single section of the research proposal is interlinked. So you need to make an argument with your research proposal that makes sense to the person that's reading it. So when we're writing the front material of our research proposal, we need to make sure again that there are some key words that are used which make sense to the person who's reading your proposal. So if you were undertaking a qualitative research study, or you wanted to undertake a qualitative research study, some of the words that you would expect to use would be exploratory, descriptive, explanatory, as opposed to quantitative research studies, which tend to use words like measure or estimation of effect. You need to make sure that you think about placing those words within the aim of your study. And you need to combine that with a possible outcome. So again, getting back to that previous slide, it's about linking all of the different sections of the research proposal together. In the front material as well, you also have the opportunity to write an abstract. Now, the abstract provides a brief summary of your study, and I will let you know from my own personal experience of having read many grant proposals, the abstract is an incredibly powerful piece of writing. Often, the reviewer or the examiner will go to the abstract first to make sure that you've covered all of the different elements that they're expecting to see in this type of research study that you're putting up. So let's think a little bit more about writing your abstract in a research proposal. So there's some uses of the abstract. From your perspective, it focuses your thinking. So needing to summarise your research proposal in a succinct way, in a certain number of words, really sharpens up what it is that you're thinking and sharpens up the way that you're communicating it. In some ways, it goes into the second point, it's a little bit like the lift pitch for your research study, the one that you'd like to do. The abstract also in the early stages of a research proposal provides a way of communicating with other possible members of a future research team. If you're writing a competitive grant application, you want to make sure that you pull together the most powerful research team that you possibly can. You want people with track record, with experience in the area, with proven results. So how do you convince them to join your team? You send them an abstract of your potential study. So the abstract again is another way of broadcasting out what it is in a summarised form that you'd like to do. Abstracts can quite often form the body of an expression of interest. Sometimes with funding grants, you might only be asked to submit an abstract in the first instance, and then the funding body will actually sieve through those and make a decision about which of these abstracts actually could lead to a full proposal. Office of Learning and Teaching in Australia, they quite often will call for an abstract and then actually invite people to submit a research proposal based on those abstracts. And as well, if you're thinking about applying into a graduate research program, your abstract is a way of being able to, create interest in potential advisors. So you may well send an abstract to a number of potential advisors to open a conversation with them about whether or not you could actually come and do a graduate research degree as part of their team. So the abstract, in summary, is a very important piece of writing. And remember, in your abstract, you need to be very clear, you need to not be repetitive, you need to be thinking sharp when you're writing your abstract. The next section of the research proposal is the background. Now, the background includes what is known and what is not known about your substantive area of inquiry. It tells the reader how your proposed study will address gaps in the evidence base, and it also contains a clear purpose statement. So when we're actually thinking about the background, we don't want to overwhelm the reader with superfluous literature, things that aren't really related to the aim of your proposed study or the purpose of it. So you need to be very discerning in the literature that you choose to cite in your background. You need to make sure that it is recent, that it is relevant, and preferably if you know where your proposal is going and if it's going to be read by somebody who has expertise in the field, you would certainly try and include some of their work in your citations list. So the background, you need to really make some balanced choices about what it is that you're planning on including. As well in the background, you need to consider whether or not this study that you're putting up requires you to provide a conceptual or theoretical framework. When it comes to qualitative research, and that's obviously what I'm most expert in, quite often this is really not an appropriate thing to include in a background section. Because in many ways, a lot of qualitative research designs are largely inductive and they rely on the researcher not coming to the study with a preconceived theoretical frame to use in relation to the analysis of the data. However, that's not always the case, and particularly in case study, you'll find that researchers who are using a qualitative case study design may well come up with some sort of theoretical framework in the background to their study that they're proposing to use in the analysis of the data. But that's unusual. If qualitative researchers feel that there really is a need or a requirement for them to provide some sort of theoretical framework in the background section, then it may well be that they'll draw on fairly broad paradigms such as feminism, critical theory, and postmodernism, to name a few of many that you could choose from, in order to convince the reader that they have that sort of theoretical understanding that they need in order to proceed with the study.